No one on Earth would ever forget the night the sky screamed. It wasn't thunder, nor the familiar hum of storms. It was something older, stranger. It came like a tear ripping through silence, painting the clouds with a shimmer of violet light. And when the skies calmed, the world had changed forever. From the torn heavens descended a fleet, silvery and silent, shaped like arrows of light. They called themselves a race older than Earth's oceans, guided by a queen whose voice could command both stars and silence alike, Queen Seraphine. Humanity trembled. Nations prepared for war, others prayed for peace, but in the end none were ready for what came next, not conquest but curiosity. They did not destroy, they studied. They touched the world gently, observing its fragile beauty. Yet among their quiet, cold precision, their queen grew restless, for in all her centuries she had never encountered a creature that burned with such reckless hope as humans did. She first met Elias, a young human engineer chosen as Earth's envoy. His hair was the color of storm-washed sand, his hands with the memory of machines, and his eyes held warmth that reached beyond logic. The queen could not comprehend it. Their first meeting was brief. She stood upon a platform of living crystal, surrounded by the hum of alien energy, while he stood beneath her, smaller, unarmed, unafraid. "Human," she said, her voice melodic yet sharp. "Your kind bleeds too easily, yet you look at me as if I am the fragile one." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe we both are." The court of the stirred. No one had ever spoken to their queen with such unshaken calm. Yet Seraphine, instead of anger, felt something else. A faint pull, like gravity itself, had softened around that small human form. Days became weeks. Earth sent more emissaries, yet she called for him alone. She asked him about oceans, about laughter, about rain. He told her of music, of how humans sang when they were afraid, and how they smiled when they mourned. She listened, and in her silence, something ancient within her began to stir, a forgotten ache she could not name. But in her world, emotion was weakness. The council whispered that the queen was changing, that she no longer saw the humans as subjects, but as something dangerously close. One night, amidst the dim blue glow of her chamber, she confronted him. "You are teaching me things that are forbidden," she whispered, her gaze glimmering like frozen stars. "Do you not fear what I could do to you?" Elias looked up at her, calm as dawn. "Fear, maybe, but isn't that what makes us alive?" For a moment the air stilled. The queen's armor flickered faintly, her aura dimming with conflict. No one had ever dared to make her feel. No one had ever offered her fear as a gift or trust as a weapon. Outside, the sky trembled with distant storms, Earth's weather rebelling against the alien presence. But within that chamber, something deeper was rebelling within the queen herself. She turned away, her voice soft. "Human, you do not understand what it means to awaken a queen who has lived without a heart." He smiled gently. "Then maybe it's time someone reminded you." And in that moment, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was alive. It pulsed with something neither alien nor human could explain, but both could feel. Something that would one day shake empires and perhaps silence a queen herself. The next morning, the capital above Earth shimmered like a second moon, vast, weightless, made of living metal that hummed in harmony with the stars. Yet within its shining corridors, the queen sat in silence. Not the proud silence of command, but the uncertain hush of feeling too much. Queen Seraphine stood before a mirror made of light, her reflection fracturing into threads of energy. For centuries, she had been more symbol than woman, her heart a cold star that never faltered. But now, something inside her beat too fast, too loud. It was as if the warmth of a human had infected her very pulse. Elias was brought before her again, escorted by two silent guards. His expression was calm, though his gaze lingered on her with something almost tender. "You summon me, your majesty," he said softly. "Have I done something wrong?" Her voice faltered for the briefest moment. "You've done something far worse, human. You've made me curious." He blinked. "Is that a crime?" "In my world," she said, stepping closer, "curiosity breeds weakness, and weakness breeds war." She turned away sharply, her robe flowing like liquid silver. Yet she felt his eyes on her, not with fear, but with something painfully human. It was as though he saw not a queen, but a woman trying not to drown. Elias spoke quietly. Maybe weakness isn't what you think it is. Sometimes it's what keeps us kind. Her breath caught, that word, kind. Among her people it was ancient, almost extinct. Kindness had been sacrificed to logic long before she was born, and yet the way he said it sounded like hope itself. That night she couldn't sleep. The stars outside her chamber felt too close, their light pressing against the glass like whispered questions. She rose, restless, and found herself drawn toward the human wing of the station. Against every law of her empire, she walked there, alone. Elias sat at the viewing deck, watching Earth spin beneath them. The planet looked fragile, veiled in clouds and blue oceans, like a gem trembling in the dark. When he turned and saw her, he smiled as though it was the most natural thing in the world. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Do not require sleep," she replied automatically, then hesitated. "But tonight I think I envy it." He gestured to the stars. "You envy humans." "Perhaps," she admitted, sitting beside him. "You burn so brightly even when you're breaking." For a long while they said nothing. Only the quiet hum of the ship filled the air. Below them, a storm rolled across the Atlantic, lightning illuminating the darkness. Elias watched it with soft eyes. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "It's chaos," she said. "Maybe," he smiled faintly, "but beauty often is." Something in her chest trembled. She looked at him, truly looked, and realized that for all his fragility there was something eternal in him. He was not the strongest but his spirit refused to bow. Humanity's gift was not power, it was persistence. Her voice softened. "You're kind, you fight even when you know you will lose." "That's what makes it worth fighting," he replied. "We don't live forever, so every heartbeat counts." Her eyes shimmered faintly, unseen tears of light gathering before she blinked them away. She wanted to speak, to confess something she could not yet name, but a sudden alarm shattered the moment. The deck glowed red. "High Council distress," came a voice through the calm. "The Queen is required immediately." Elias stood, concern flashing in his gaze. "What's happening?" She didn't answer. Her expression hardened, the mask of the monarch returning. Yet before she turned to leave, she whispered, "Human, remember your words, every heartbeat counts." And as she vanished into the glowing corridors, Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. For the first time, he feared that something, or someone, would soon stop that heartbeat for good. The council chamber glowed with cold, sapphire light. The elders stood in a half-circle around the queen, their long forms rising like silver pillars. Each one was ancient beyond memory, bound by logic, untouched by feeling. To them, emotion was not life, it was corrosion. Queen Seraphine stepped into their midst, the light of her crown dimmed. The eldest among them, Archon, tilted his head. His voice was smooth and sharp, like glass sliding across stone. "Your Majesty," he began, "we sense disturbances within you. Your aura no longer resonates in perfect alignment." Seraphine's tone remained calm, though beneath it lay a faint tremor. "Alignment is not perfection, it is stagnation." A murmur passed through the council. Another elder hissed softly, "You have been influenced by the human." The word human fell like an accusation. Seraphine raised her chin. "You fear what you cannot understand. He is not a threat." "He is a virus," replied coldly. "Humans are unpredictable, ruled by chaos and sentiment. Yet you let this one breathe our air, touch our halls, and worse, touch your thoughts." For the first time, her voice grew hard. "Enough!" The word cracked through the chamber, the walls humming in response. "You forget who commands this throne." But only bowed faintly, his tones silken with quiet defiance. "We do not forget, my queen. We only fear you may have forgotten yourself." The meeting ended, but its venom lingered. When she left the chamber, the corridors seemed colder. For centuries, the council had obeyed without question, but now she could feel their eyes watching her every move. She returned to her private sanctum, the echo of Elias' words haunting her. Every heartbeat counts. The hum of the city outside seemed heavier tonight, as though the entire empire held its breath. She looked at her reflection, her face ageless, perfect, empty. And then, like a whisper carried by gravity itself, she heard a voice, his voice, from the communicator she'd hidden beneath her robes. "Seraphine," Elias said quietly, "they don't trust you, do they?" She froze. "How did you?" "I saw the council's envoys leave your chamber. They looked like thunder about to break." For a moment, her pride fought against the warmth his concern awakened. "I do not require protection, Elias." "I didn't say you did," he replied gently. "But even storms forget what rain feels like until it touches them." Something inside her melted at that. The words were strange, unguarded, but they reached her. She found herself speaking more softly. "You shouldn't contact me this way. They would call it treason." "Then let them," he said simply. "If caring is treason, I'll wear it proudly." Her heart, the star at the center of her being, beat too loudly. She turned away from the communicator, breathing unsteadily. "You're reckless, human." He laughed quietly. "You keep saying that like it's an insult." Outside her window, a storm of meteors drifted past the station like frozen tears. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the faint hum of the universe. "Elias," she said finally, "you speak as though you are not afraid of me." "I'm not," he said. "You're not a monster, Seraphine, you're lonely." The silence that followed was not cold, it was honest. For the first time in centuries, someone had dared to name her emptiness aloud. But before she could reply, a flicker of red light cut across her chamber, a security breach. Her communicator dissolved from her hand as the ship's AI announced. "Unauthorized transmission detected. Source, human envoy sector." Her pulse quickened. "No," she whispered, "they'll trace it." She raced through the hall, her cloak trailing behind like liquid night. Guards saluted as she passed, unaware of her panic. She reached the human quarters, but the doors were sealed. Through the glass, she saw Elias restrained by two sentinels, his gaze calm even as they raised their weapons. Seraphine slammed her hand on the controls. "Release him." "By council order," the guard replied. "The human is to be detained for interference with royal systems." Her voice was a whisper of thunder. "Do you defy your queen?" The guards hesitated. For one fleeting moment, power hung in the air like a blade. Then, trembling, they obeyed. Elias stumbled forward, rubbing his wrists, breathing heavily. "I'm okay," he murmured. Seraphine looked at him, fury and fear colliding in her chest. "You fool, you've put yourself in danger." He looked up, eyes steady. "Then maybe you'll understand what we humans do when something is worth the risk." And for the first time, the Queen of the had no answer. For 3 days, the halls of the capital whispered. The council was silent, but silence was often more dangerous than words. Spies moved in the corners of light. Rumors spread that the Queen's composure was cracking, that the human had bewitched her mind. Yet in her private quarters, Seraphine found herself doing the unthinkable, waiting. When Elias finally entered, escorted by guards, she dismissed them with a wave. The doors closed behind him, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The faint hum of the ship filled the air between them like a heartbeat. She studied him quietly. His face was tired, a bruise at his temple from the arrest, but his eyes still carried that impossible calm. "You could have been executed," she said softly. "Would that have silenced the council?" he asked with a crooked half-smile. Her lips twitched, though her gaze darkened. "You mock death too easily." He shrugged lightly. "We just understand it better. It's the one thing we all share, rich or poor, weak or strong. Maybe that's why we try to make every moment mean something." She turned away, packing toward the edge of her chamber where the stars pressed against the glass. "Meaning," she repeated under her breath. "You speak of it as if it were a material thing, something to touch, to trade." "Maybe it is," he said gently. "You just need the right heart to feel its weight." Those words struck something deep in her, so deep that for a moment her control fractured. The light around her dimmed, her power faltering like a flickering flame. Elias stepped closer, concerned. "Seraphine, are you?" "Do not come closer," she snapped, turning sharply. Her voice cracked, not with anger but fear. "When us emotions breach containment, it destabilizes the energy core. I could." She stopped herself, her breath shaking. He hesitated, then slowly reached into his pocket. Then maybe you need this more than I do. From his hand he drew out a small object, a pendant of dull metal shaped like a simple ring on a chain. It was old, worn by touch, but it gleamed faintly in the alien light. "It was my sister," he said quietly. "She used to say this ring reminded her to stay brave even when the world didn't make sense. When she died, I kept it. I guess it became my reminder too." Seraphine stared at it as if it were something sacred. "A trinket." "No," he corrected softly, "a memory. You can't destroy a memory by fear. It survives even when you don't want it to." She reached out slowly, her fingers trembling just before they brushed the ring. When her skin touched it, a faint hum rippled through the room. Her eyes widened. The metal reacted to her touch, glowing with a faint, golden warmth. "What is this?" she whispered. Elias smiled faintly. "It's human love, I suppose, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that endures." Her voice faltered. "You would give this to me." "I already did," he said simply. "You just hadn't taken it yet." She turned the pendant over in her palm. The glow pulsed gently, as though it had found life in her touch. Her heart, long silent and disciplined, beat once hard enough to make her catch her breath. "Elias," she whispered, voice breaking for the first time in centuries. "You don't understand what this means. The Council forbids attachments if they discover." "They already suspect," he said. "But if they can't understand what makes us human, maybe they need to see it." She looked up, meeting his eyes. For a heartbeat, the entire universe seemed to pause, two souls from different worlds, standing at the thin edge of everything forbidden. Then the door hissed open. Archon entered, flanked by guards. His tone was cold and victorious. "My queen, it seems the human has shared more than words." Seraphine hid the pendant in her palm, but the faint golden glow betrayed her. His eyes narrowed. "So it's true, you've been infected by him." "Enough," she said sharply. "You will not speak of infection in my presence." His voice cut through the air like frost. "Then you leave us no choice. By decree of the Council, you are to be relieved of command until your purity can be restored." The guards raised their weapons, shimmering with energy. Elias stepped in front of her before she could react. "Don't touch her." A sharp hum echoed. One of the guards fired. The blast struck the floor near Elias, searing light across the chamber. Seraphine's fury exploded like a star. "Stop!" The walls trembled with her cry. The guards fell back, overwhelmed by the pulse of her unleashed energy. Her voice broke, shaking with power and anguish. "If you ever raise a weapon at him again," she said, eyes glowing with light, "I will burn this empire to silence." And in that moment, for the first time in history, the queen stood not for her people, but for a human. The air in the citadel hung thick with tension. The queen's command had shattered a law older than memory. Across the fleet, silence spread like wildfire, an impossible silence that screamed rebellion. By dawn, every screen in the empire pulsed with the same message. Queen Seraphine compromised, command suspended. The council had seized control. The royal insignia was stripped from the walls, her codes revoked, her access. Even the palace's light dimmed, as if the ship itself mourned its ruler's fall. She stood at the edge of her chamber, her crown removed, her once luminous aura dulled to gray. For the first time since her coronation, she looked mortal. Elias entered quietly. He had been confined to quarters after the confrontation, but when he heard of her exile, he broke through the guards with nothing but words and persistence. "They've taken your command," he said softly, his voice careful but steady. She didn't turn to face him. "No," she whispered. "They've taken my silence, and without silence I am no queen." He stepped closer. "You're wrong. Maybe for the first time you're more than that." Her eyes flicked toward him, tired, hollow, yet still fierce. "Do you not understand? I was built to lead through logic, not to feel. My people will destroy me for this." Elias met her gaze with quiet defiance. "Then let them. They'll destroy what they can't understand, but they can't kill truth, Seraphine. You gave them a glimpse of it, and now they're afraid." She laughed bitterly, though the sound cracked halfway through. "You humans name chaos as truth." He smiled faintly. Because truth isn't meant to be clean, it's meant to be real. The words lingered, echoing in the empty chamber. She wanted to believe him, but belief was a dangerous thing. For centuries, her people had erased it from their veins. Suddenly, the doors burst open. A guard stumbled inside, wounded, his armor scorched. "My queen," he gasped. "The council has initiated purge protocol. All human envoys are to be eliminated." Elias froze. "What?" Seraphine's blood ran cold. "That cannot be." But even before she finished, alarms blared through the corridors. Red light washed over the walls as sirens wailed like morning bells. Elias grabbed her arm. "We have to stop them." She hesitated, her mind splitting between duty and something far more human, fear for him. The council controls the main deck. The protocol can only be canceled through the central core. "Then that's where we go," he said. She stared at him, this fragile human standing unarmed before an empire built to erase him. And for a moment, she saw something divine in his defiance. They ran. The corridors shook under the weight of the fleet's movement. Drones flooded the halls, their metallic wings slicing the air with deadly precision. Seraphine's power flared, her aura cutting through the shadows, shielding Elias as they moved. But each time she unleashed her strength, it tore at her body. The systems were rejecting her, her own city fighting against her as if she were an intruder. Elias saw the pain in her eyes. "You're burning yourself out," he warned. "I am already ash," she said through clenched teeth. "Keep moving." They reached the core, an enormous chamber of light, a swirling nexus of living energy. The floor shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting both of their faces, one alien, one human, both trembling from exhaustion. The control spire rose in the center, tall and bright as a pillar of dawn. It pulsed red, the mark of the active purge. Seraphine pressed her hand to the spire. The energy recoiled, rejecting her touch. "They've locked me out," she whispered. "Only the council's code can override it." Elias looked at the glowing interface, its symbols foreign yet strangely familiar. "I can try," he said, stepping forward. "You don't understand this technology," she protested. "Maybe not," he said, fingers brushing the controls, "but I understand intention." He closed his eyes and began tracing the patterns she'd once shown him, the shapes of their written energy language. His movements were unsure, but his focus was pure. The spire trembled, the red glow flickering. "How?" she breathed. He smiled faintly. "You told me once that your language responds to emotion, not logic, so I'm giving it something it can't predict." Suddenly the system flared. The light around them surged gold, then white, alive. The purge command halted midstream. "It worked," she whispered. But the victory was short-lived. From above, the voice of Archon thundered through the chamber. "You have doomed yourself, Seraphine. And you, human, you will fade like dust when this ship consumes itself." Panels tore from the walls as personal guards descended, armored in silver light. Seraphine turned, fury blazing through her. "You will not touch him." Sneered, "You would betray your crown for a creature of dust and bone." She stepped forward, her aura igniting into a storm of light. "Not for a creature," she said coldly, "for a soul that reminded me I still had one." The chamber erupted in chaos, energy blades clashing, air crackling with heat. Elias dove for cover as Seraphine fought, her power flaring brighter than it ever had. Yet even as she stood invincible, Elias could see the truth. Every burst of light was costing her, burning her from within. And as the battle reached its crescendo, he realized the horrifying truth. The only way to end it might be to let her fall. The chamber burned with color, gold, violet, and crimson, each wave of energy colliding in furious light. The sound was not war, it was grief made thunder. Queen Seraphine stood at the center, her body glowing with raw power as she faced Archon and his guards. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice shattering across the walls. Sneer twisted into rage. "You no longer command us, Seraphine. You are infected with human disease, emotion. It has made you weak." "Then let weakness speak," she said. "Let it show you the strength you forgot existed." She unleashed a surge of force that sent the first guard crashing into the wall, his armor shattering like glass. Elias ducked beneath the cascade of sparks, heart pounding, as the floor trembled beneath them. Stepped forward, raising his staff. You would destroy everything you were made to protect. Seraphine's breath came ragged. I am protecting it from becoming something soulless. Their powers collided, light against darkness, reason against feeling. Each blast sent shockwaves through the station's core. The hum of the city turned into a low, mournful cry. The ship itself seemed to grieve. Elias knew she couldn't hold out forever. Every pulse of her energy burned through her veins like fire. He sprinted toward the control spire, shouting over the roar, "Seraphine, the core's destabilizing. If this keeps going, it'll take the whole fleet." She turned, her eyes blazing white. "Then you must leave." "I'm not leaving you," he said fiercely. Her lips trembled, torn between anger and something deeper. "You don't understand, Elias. My body is bound to the core. If I fall, it collapses with me. Go before it's too late." But he stepped closer. "You told me once your people forgot how to feel. Maybe it's time they remembered." Raised his weapon again. "Enough." He fired, an arc of blue energy cutting through the chamber. Without thought, Seraphine moved, placing herself between the blast and Elias. The bolt struck her squarely in the chest. The sound that followed wasn't a scream. It was silence made unbearable. Her body staggered, light pouring from the wound like spilled starlight. Elias caught her as she fell, the faint hum of her heart echoing through his arms. "Seraphine, no." Her hand lifted weakly to his face. "Do not grieve," she whispered, her voice fragile but calm. "Every heartbeat counts." He felt the warmth of her fatting pulse against his palm. "You can't leave now. Please fight." "I am fighting," she said, a faint smile trembling on her lips. "Not with power, but with choice." Behind them, the control spire glowed brighter, uncontrolled energy surging toward overload. Realized it too late. "No, she's fusing with the core." The queen turned her gaze toward him. "You called it a disease. Then let my disease save what your perfection would destroy." Her light began to spread, filling the room, spreading into the circuits, into the ship itself. Elias felt her slipping from his grasp, her form dissolving into radiant mist. "Seraphine," he shouted, trying to hold on. She looked at him one last time. Her eyes, once cold, now shimmered with infinite warmth. "My gift to you, human, is silence, not of fear, but of peace." Then, with one final burst of light, she was gone. The explosion didn't come as fire, but as brilliance. The station trembled, yet instead of destruction, a strange calm descended. The purge systems shut down, the alarms faded, and the red lights turned to soft white. Elias fell to his knees, surrounded by the gentle glow of her sacrifice. The guards stood motionless, their weapons lowered, faces awash in awe. Even could not speak. The Queen's energy had bound itself into the heart of the ship, silencing every weapon, every command. All that remained was her pendant, the ring she had held, lying warm against the floor. Elias picked it up with trembling hands. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. He whispered, voice breaking, "Every heartbeat counts, right, Seraphine?" And for a moment the air shimmered, so softly he almost thought he imagined it. A voice, gentle and distant, answered in his mind. "Yes, and now yours must continue mine." The chamber dimmed, leaving only Elias kneeling in the quiet light, the last human in an empire that had just learned what it meant to feel. For 3 long days, the skies above Earth glimmered with unearthly light. The fleet hung motionless, their once commanding presence now eerily quiet. No orders came from the council. No weapons stirred. It was as if the entire armada was holding its breath, waiting for a queen who would never return. And in the quiet heart of their great capital, Elias awoke. His body ached, his thoughts heavy with the memory of light, her light. The room he lay in was soft and pale, woven from living metal that hummed faintly with energy. Around him, the air shimmered with something he couldn't name, a stillness that wasn't empty but whole. He sat up slowly, his hand instinctively clutching the pendant at his chest, the small ring now glowing faintly gold. It pulsed gently against his skin, warm, alive. "She's still here," he murmured, A voice answered him from the doorway. In a way, she is. Elias turned to see, no longer cloaked in authority but in quiet remorse. His silver armor was cracked, the light of his eyes dim. The Queen's energy bonded with the central core. Her essence flows through every system, every ship, every heartbeat of our kind. Elias frowned. You mean she became your entire fleet? Nodded slowly. She silenced our weapons, ended the purge, and erased the Council's commands. She gave us peace by giving herself. For a long moment, neither spoke. Elias stared out through the viewing glass. Earth shimmered below, fragile and blue, but now unguarded by fear. She saved you, he said finally, even after you betrayed her. Lowered his head. She saw something we could not. She said humanity was our reflection, that where we were hollow, you were whole. He approached slowly, placing a small crystalline shard on the table beside Elias. Inside it flickered faint light, a remnant of Seraphine's power. She left this behind for you, a fragment of her memory. It's dormant but alive. Elias reached out, his hand trembling. The shard's surface was cool, yet beneath it he felt warmth, a pulse faint and rhythmic like a sleeping heart. He smiled weakly, so she really did make every heartbeat count. His expression softened. She changed us, human. The Council has been dissolved. For the first time in our empire must choose without command. Elias looked up. Then choose compassion. That's all she ever wanted from you. Bowed deeply, a gesture once reserved only for their queen. Perhaps you should tell them yourself. They listen now to silence. When Elias stepped onto the command deck, hundreds of turned to face him. They no longer looked like the cold, distant beings he'd met before. Their lights flickered with color, faint, uncertain, human. He took a deep breath. His voice trembled, but his words carried warmth. She gave her life to show you what we are, he began. Not conquerors, not perfection, but beings who love, who fall, who rise again. That's what it means to be alive. You called it weakness, but maybe it's the strongest thing we have. The chamber remained still. Then one by one they lowered their heads. Their lights dimmed in unison, a gesture of mourning and of reverence. From the ceiling a faint hum rose. The ship's systems pulsed once as if acknowledging his words. Elias felt the vibration in his chest, gentle, familiar. Seraphine, he whispered. Outside, the stars brightened. The fleet began to shift, turning slowly toward Earth. One of the smaller ships broke formation, drifting gently downward, a gesture of peace, of return. His voice came over the comms. Her final directive was clear: protect the blue world. Elias closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his cheek, caught in the faint gold glow of the pendant. Then I'll protect it with you. Years passed. Humanity rebuilt, no longer beneath alien shadow, but beside it. They became guardians, their ships orbiting quietly like silent angels. And in every one of their vessels, the lights pulsed softly in rhythm, a heartbeat that had once belonged to a queen. Elias spent his days teaching them, songs, stories, laughter, things they'd never known could exist in silence. And at night, he'd stand at the window of the outpost, watching the stars shimmer. Sometimes, when the wind brushed the metal walls, he swore he could hear her voice in the hum, calm, radiant, endless. Every heartbeat counts. He'd smile then, hand over his chest where her ring still glowed softly. And though the universe stretched vast and cold beyond them, it no longer felt empty. Because somewhere in the stillness between stars, a human's gift had silenced an alien queen, and in doing so taught an entire species how to listen again.